The massive space station floated in the darkness like a jewel made of light and metal. Unity Station was the largest thing ever built by the Galactic Council. It orbited a dead world called Sanctum Prime, chosen because no species owned it. Here, in this neutral place, the galaxy conducted its business of peace. Today was special. Representatives from 47 alien species had gathered in the Grand Assembly Hall. They wore their finest clothes and spoke in excited whispers. After decades of watching humanity from afar, the moment had finally arrived. First contact would happen today. Ambassador Trillix smoothed his feathers nervously. He was an avian, a bird-like creature standing 2 meters tall, with bright blue plumage and sharp golden eyes. For 300 years, his family had served the Council. He had welcomed 12 new species into the fold. This would be his 13th. The humans will be confused at first, he said to his companion. They always are. But they will learn to appreciate what we offer. Mediator Ven stood beside him, a being made entirely of living crystal. Light passed through his body and scattered into rainbows on the floor. His voice sounded like wind chimes when he spoke. Their transmissions show a violent history. Wars upon wars. Perhaps they will resist longer than most. Trillix made a sound like laughter. They have one planet. We have thousands. They will see reason. Far away, hidden in a fold of space that bent light and sensors around it, Admiral De Hyon stood on the bridge of the UNS Indomitable. He was a tall man with gray hair cut short and a face that had seen too many battles. His uniform was simple and dark, without medals or decorations. He did not need metal on his chest to prove his worth. Around him, 200 warships waited in silence. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and battleships, all armed with weapons that could crack planets. All crewed by men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. "Admiral," said Captain Wu Jin, stepping up beside him. He was younger, with a quick mind and steady hands. "The Indomitable is ready to proceed alone." De Hyon nodded slowly. "And the fleet?" "Fold space generators are stable. They can drop into normal space within 4 seconds of your signal." "Good." The Admiral turned to look at the holographic display showing Unity Station. It looked so peaceful, so welcoming. "Do you know what the Council calls us, Captain?" Wu Jin shook his head, charmingly primitive. De Hyon smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "They think we are children who need guidance." In the briefing room below, Dr. Hai Jin spread data files across the table. She was small and thin, with glasses that she constantly pushed up her nose. But her mind was sharp enough to cut steel. She had spent 15 years studying alien communications, learning their languages, understanding their cultures. Commander Su Jin sat across from her, arms crossed over her chest. She was the ship's second officer, responsible for tactical operations. Her short black hair framed a face that rarely smiled. "Tell me again, how many species have joined the Council voluntarily?" "0, Haijin replied. "Not one. And how many have tried to refuse?" 17. Haijin pulled up historical records on her display. All of them were blockaded until their economies collapsed. Then the peacekeepers arrived to restore order. After that, the government signed whatever treaties the Council wanted. Su Jin leaned forward. "And their militaries?" "Disbanded within 10 years of joining. Every single one." Haijin took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. "The Council calls it demilitarization for peace. They say weapons cause conflict, so removing weapons removes conflict. But the Council keeps its own weapons. The peacekeepers have the largest fleet in the galaxy. 3,000 warships at last count. No single species can challenge them." Haijin put her glasses back on. "That is the peace they offer. Obedience in exchange for safety." Lieutenant Yan He entered the room with fresh coffee. She was young, barely 25, but she had earned her position through skill and dedication. "The Admiral wants you both on the bridge. We're about to make our approach." The Indomitable emerged from fold space alone, exactly where the Council expected it. Sensors from Unity Station immediately locked onto the ship, scanning it for weapons and crew. What they found was a single vessel carrying diplomatic staff and a skeleton crew. Nothing threatening. Nothing to fear. Admiral Dehayan watched the station grow larger on the view screen. Thousands of ships surrounded it, merchant vessels, passenger liners, diplomatic yachts. And among them, positioned at strategic points, were the peacekeepers. Their warships were elegant and curved, designed more for beauty than function. They had not fought a real battle in centuries. "They're hailing us," reported the communications officer. On screen, Ambassador Trilix appeared, his feathers arranged in formal patterns. "Welcome, humans, to Unity Station. The Galactic Council extends its warmest greetings to your species. We have prepared ceremonies to celebrate this historic moment." Dehayan kept his face neutral. "We are honored by your welcome, Ambassador. We look forward to meeting the Council." The connection ended. Wu Jin stepped closer to the Admiral and lowered his voice. "They have 6 peacekeeper cruisers within weapons range. I see them. Should we be concerned?" Dehayan shook his head. "Those ships are for show. They want us to feel their power before the negotiations begin." He turned to face his crew. "Everyone knows their roles. We will attend their ceremony. We will listen to their speeches. And when the time comes, we will show them what humanity truly is." The Indomitable docked at Unity Station without incident. Dehayan led his delegation through gleaming corridors, filled with alien artwork and holographic displays showing the Council's history. Everything was designed to impress, to overwhelm, to make visitors feel small. Dr. Hai Jin walked beside him, translating the whispers of aliens they passed. "They think we are simple, primitive. They expect us to bow. Let them think what they want," Dehayan replied. For now, the Grand Assembly Hall was vast enough to hold 10,000 beings. Delegates from every member species filled the seats, their eyes fixed on the small group of humans entering through the main doors. Some looked curious. Others looked hungry. At the center of the hall, a podium waited. Behind it, massive screens showed images of earth-blue oceans, green forests, crowded cities. The message was clear. "This is what you risk if you refuse us." Ambassador Trilix took the podium first. His speech was long and filled with pretty words about unity and harmony. He spoke of the peace the Council had maintained for 8 centuries. He spoke of prosperity and cooperation. He never mentioned the species that had been crushed for resisting. When he finished, he gestured toward Dehayan. "And now, we welcome the representative of humanity to share their hopes for our shared future." Admiral Dehayan walked to the podium. 10,000 aliens watched him. Millions more watched through broadcasts sent across the galaxy. He looked out at them all, these creatures who thought they knew what humanity was. He smiled. "Thank you for your welcome," he began. "However, we must decline your invitation to join the Galactic Council." The silence that followed was absolute. The silence lasted only 3 seconds. Then the Grand Assembly Hall exploded into chaos. Aliens shouted in 100 different languages. Some jumped to their feet. Others stared in disbelief, their translation devices struggling to keep up with the noise. In 800 years of Council history, no species had ever refused membership. The idea was unthinkable. It was like refusing to breathe. Ambassador Trilix stood frozen at the edge of the podium, his feathers slowly changing from blue to a dark, angry purple. His beak opened and closed several times before he found his voice. "Perhaps there has been a translation error." "Surely you mean—" "There is no error," Admiral Dehayan said calmly. His voice carried through the hall speakers, cutting through the chaos. Humanity appreciates your offer, but we will not be joining the Galactic Council. Not today. Not ever. Mediator Ven moved forward, his crystal body catching the light and scattering it across the delegates. When he spoke, his voice was soft but carried a clear warning. Admiral, I do not think you understand the situation. Council membership is not truly optional. It is simply the natural order of things. Natural for whom? For everyone. Ven spread his hands in a gesture meant to look peaceful. Species that remain outside the Council face certain difficulties. Trade becomes complicated. Protection becomes unavailable. The galaxy can be a dangerous place for those who stand alone. Captain Wu Jin stood behind Dai Haiyan, his hand resting casually near the sidearm hidden under his jacket. He counted the security personnel in the room, 24, all armed with weapons designed to stun rather than kill. The Council had not needed to kill anyone in a very long time. Dr. Hai Jin stepped forward, a data pad in her hands. If I may, Admiral? Dai Haiyan nodded and moved aside. Hai Jin faced the assembly with the calm expression of a scholar presenting research. We have studied the Galactic Council extensively. Your history, your treaties, your methods. She touched her data pad, and the screens behind her changed from images of Earth to something else entirely. Documents appeared. Official Council records. Trade agreements that stripped new members of their resources. Security treaties that demanded the destruction of all military vessels. Economic plans that made species dependent on Council goods. And most damning of all, communications between Council leaders discussing how to break the will of resistant populations. The Talax Confederacy refused membership in year 412 of the Council calendar, Hai Jin said, her voice steady. Their homeworld was blockaded for 3 years, 40 million being starved. When they finally signed the membership treaty, they called it a great honor. The screens changed again. More records. More evidence. The Breen Collective held out for 5 years. The Council poisoned their water supplies and blamed it on pirates. The Collective joined within months. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Some delegates looked away from the screens. Others stared with expressions of shock or shame. The crystalline choir was told their membership was voluntary, Hai Jin continued. When they declined, the Council destroyed their sacred moon. Officially, it was an asteroid impact. The truth is here, in these documents, signed by Council leaders who are still alive today. Ambassador Trilix found his voice again. These documents are forgeries. Lies created by a primitive species that fears what it does not understand. They are pulled directly from your own archives, Hai Jin replied. Encrypted files that your security experts believed could never be accessed. They were wrong. Commander Su Jin watched the crowd carefully. The mood was shifting. Some delegates looked angry, but others looked thoughtful. A few were whispering to each other with expressions of dawning realization. The truth was spreading like a crack in ice. A new figure appeared on the main screen. He was massive and reptilian, covered in scales the color of dried blood. His eyes were yellow and cold. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. I am Enforcer Prime Cax, commander of the Peacekeeper fleet. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. I have heard enough of this circus. Admiral Daehan, you will surrender your vessel and your crew. You will return to Earth and tell your people to prepare for integration. If you refuse, I will teach you the lesson that all primitive species must learn. Daehan looked at the screen without fear. And what lesson is that? That peace is not optional. Cax leaned forward. You have 1 ship. I have 3,000. Your bravery is amusing, but it is also foolish. Surrender now, and your people will be treated well. Resist, and I will turn your planet into a warning for the next species that thinks it can stand against the Council." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Every eye in the Grand Assembly Hall was fixed on him. This was the moment. This was where species learned to bow. This was where hope died and obedience began. Daehyun touched a small device on his wrist. Outside Unity Station, space itself seemed to tear open. 200 human warships dropped out of fold space in perfect formation, surrounding the station like a closed fist. They appeared in less than 4 seconds, their weapons already powered and locked onto every peacekeeper vessel in range. The Indomitable had been alone. Now it was the tip of a spear, pointed at the heart of the Galactic Council. Inside the assembly hall, alarms began to scream. Delegates scrambled for exits. Security personnel stood frozen, unsure what to do. Ambassador Trilix stared at the tactical display that had appeared on every screen, showing the impossible fleet that had materialized from nowhere. On the main screen, Enforcer Prime Cax's expression had changed. His smile was gone. His yellow eyes were wide. For the first time in his long career, he was looking at something he did not understand. How? He breathed. "Your species has only had space travel for 2 centuries. How is this possible?" Admiral Daehyun stepped back to the podium. "Humanity has a saying, Enforcer Prime. It comes from an old war on our world. Would you like to hear it?" Cax said nothing. Never underestimate an enemy who has everything to lose. Daehyun's voice was hard now, all pretense of diplomacy gone. "You looked at our planet and saw a primitive species. You saw our wars and thought we were weak. You were wrong." Lieutenant Yeon Hee appeared at Su Jin's side, her hand on her weapon. "Commander, we have confirmation. All fleet elements are in position. Peacekeeper vessels are powering weapons." Su Jin nodded. "Admiral, the enemy is preparing to engage. Let them." Daehyun turned back to the screen where Cax glowered at him. "You wanted to teach us a lesson, Enforcer Prime. I think it is time for class to begin." Cax's eyes narrowed. "You cannot defeat 3,000 ships with 200. The mathematics do not work." "Then perhaps," Daehyun replied, "you should have studied your mathematics more carefully." He gave a signal. The human fleet began to move. Outside, in the cold silence of space, the first shots were fired. Not by the peacekeepers, who were still forming into battle lines. By humanity, who had been ready for this moment since the day they first discovered they were not alone in the universe. The galaxy had prepared for peace. Humanity had prepared for war. And war, as the Council was about to learn, was something humanity understood very, very well. The first peacekeeper cruiser died before its captain even understood what was happening. A railgun slug, accelerated to 15% of the speed of light, punched through its shields like they were made of paper. The ship split in half, spilling fire and bodies into the void. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Woojin coordinated the battle through a neural interface that connected him to every ship in the fleet. Information flowed into his mind faster than words could carry. He saw everything. He knew everything. And he directed humanity's response with a precision that bordered on art. Destroyer Squadron 2, Vector Adjustment. Enemy formation is attempting to flank. His voice was calm, almost bored. Carrier Group 1, launch fighter screens. Keep their bombers away from the station. Commander Su Jin worked beside him, managing the point defense systems that turned incoming missiles into expanding clouds of debris. Her console showed a constant stream of threats, but she handled each one with the ease of long practice. "They're fighting like they've never seen real opposition." "They haven't," Woojin replied. "Not in 800 years. Far from the Indomitable, Colonel Kite led his destroyer squadron in a wolf pack strike against the Peacekeeper flagship. His ship, The UNS Swift Blade was smaller than the enemy vessels, but moved with impossible speed. Where peacekeeper ships turned slowly, their crews struggling with momentum, Kitei's destroyers danced through space like predators hunting prey. All units, target their engine sections, Kitei ordered. We want them disabled, not destroyed. Leave them alive to witness their defeat. The Swift Blade fired 3 missiles in rapid succession. Each one was equipped with an AI hunting system that adapted to enemy defenses in real time. The first missile drew the flagship's point defense fire. The second was destroyed by a laser battery. The third slipped through the gap and detonated against the enemy's main engine. The flagship went dark. Emergency lights flickered on as its crew scrambled to restore power. But Kitei was already gone, his squadron racing toward the next target. Inside Unity Station, Admiral De Haiyan watched the battle unfold on the tactical display. Red dots representing peacekeeper ships vanished one by one. Blue dots, his fleet, moved in coordinated patterns that seemed almost choreographed. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Lieutenant Yeon Hee stood at his side, relaying reports from across the fleet. Enemy losses at 40% and climbing. Our casualties are minimal. 3 destroyers damaged. 1 cruiser has lost engine power. Tell the cruiser to fall back to the support line, De Haiyan said. No need to risk lives unnecessarily. Dr. Hai Jin appeared at his elbow. Admiral, the council delegates are panicking. Several are demanding to know what we want. Others are trying to flee the station. Let them panic. Fear is educational. De Haiyan turned to face her. But make sure no one is hurt. We are not here to slaughter civilians. Outside, the battle raged on. Specialist Na Young sat at her weapons console aboard the destroyer Iron Storm, her young face illuminated by targeting displays. She was 22 years old and had never fired a weapon in combat before today. But her hands were steady and her mind was clear. Target lock on enemy cruiser 7, she reported, awaiting permission to fire. Her captain, a woman named Yoonji, nodded once. Fire. Na Young pressed the button. The Iron Storm's main cannon released a burst of superheated plasma that crossed the distance to the enemy ship in less than a second. The cruiser's shields held for exactly 1.3 seconds before collapsing. The plasma tore through the hull and ignited the ammunition storage. The cruiser exploded. Na Young watched the debris spread across space. Somewhere in that cloud of metal and fire, beings had died. Beings with families and hopes and fears. She felt something cold settle in her stomach. Good shot, Captain Yoonji said quietly. I know what you're feeling. Remember it. Remember that war has a cost. That's what makes us different from them. Enforcer Prime Cax stood on the bridge of his crippled flagship, watching his fleet die. The tactical display showed nothing but disaster. His 3,000 ships were being torn apart by an enemy force less than a tenth their size. It was impossible. It was humiliating. It was happening. How? He roared at his officers. How are they doing this? A junior officer, trembling with fear, answered. Their ships are faster, sir. Their weapons are more powerful. And they're sharing tactical data through some kind of network we can't penetrate. They react to our movements before we even make them. Cax slammed his fist against the command console, then jammed their communications. Blind them. We tried, sir. Their encryption is beyond anything we've encountered. We can't even identify what frequency they're using. The truth was simple but terrible. The Galactic Council had not fought a real war in 8 centuries. Their peacekeeper fleet was designed to intimidate weaker species, not to battle equals. Their weapons were outdated. Their tactics were ancient. Their crews had never faced an enemy that could fight back. Humanity had never stopped preparing for war. Even during their years of peace on Earth, they had continued to develop new weapons and new strategies. They had studied every conflict in their history, learned from every mistake, and built a military machine designed to face the worst the universe could offer. The Council was paying the price for their complacency. After 2 hours of battle, the Peacekeeper fleet was shattered. 1,500 ships destroyed, 800 disabled. The rest scattered across the system, running from an enemy they could not defeat. Of the human fleet, 17 ships had been damaged seriously enough to require repair. None had been destroyed. Admiral Dayon opened a communication channel to the enemy flagship. Enforcer Prime Cax appeared on the screen, his scales dull with stress. His eyes filled with something that might have been despair. "This is Admiral Dayon of the United Nations Fleet. I am offering terms of surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your crews will be treated according to the laws of war. You have my word." Cax stared at him for a long moment. "And if I refuse? Then I will finish what I started." "Your choice, Enforcer Prime." Silence stretched between them. On the bridge of the flagship, Cax's officers waited for his command. Some looked ready to continue fighting. Others looked relieved that it might finally be over. Cax closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the fire in them had gone out. "I accept your terms." The guns fell silent. The battle was over. In the Grand Assembly Hall, 10,000 delegates sat in stunned silence. Their invincible peacekeepers had been defeated. Their galaxy had changed. And the humans who had done this impossible thing were still standing on their podium, calm and unbroken. Commander Su Jin allowed herself a small smile. Not bad for a primitive species. Captain Wu Jin nodded slowly. The hard part is just beginning. He was right. Winning the battle had been the easy part. Now humanity had to decide what to do with their victory. They could become the new masters of the galaxy, replacing one form of tyranny with another. Or they could try something that had never been done before. They could try to set the galaxy free. Admiral Dayon looked out at the defeated fleet and the terrified delegates and the wreckage of everything the Council had built. 800 years of oppression ended in a single day. "Signal all ships," he said quietly. "Stand down from combat stations, but maintain alert status." "Sir?" "Yeon," he asked, "the fighting is over." Dayon turned to face his crew. "Now comes the part that truly matters. Now we must prove that we are better than those we defeated." The galaxy was watching. The galaxy was waiting. And humanity was just getting started. 3 days after the battle, Unity Station had transformed into something it had never been before. The corridors that once echoed with the confident footsteps of Council officials now buzzed with confusion and hope and fear. Everything had changed, and no one knew what would come next. Admiral Dayon established his headquarters in what had been the Council's main conference room. The symbols of Council authority had been removed, replaced by a simple banner showing Earth's continents against a black background. Human soldiers stood guard at the entrances, but they were instructed to be polite. They were liberators, not conquerors. At least, that was the plan. Dr. Hai-Jin led the diplomatic efforts alongside Ambassador Mi-sun, a woman who had spent 30 years negotiating peace treaties on Earth. Mi-sun had gray hair and a warm smile that hid a mind as sharp as any blade. She understood something that many warriors did not. Winning a war was easy compared to winning a peace. "We have requests from 18 species asking for meetings," Mi-sun reported during the morning briefing. "Half of them want our protection. A quarter want to know our terms of surrender. The rest are not sure what they want." Commander Su Jin stood by the window, watching peacekeeper prisoners being escorted to holding areas. "And the ones who haven't requested meetings?" "Watching, waiting." Mi-sun shook her head. They fear us. They think we will become the new council, the new oppressors. Can you blame them? Daihan asked. We appeared with a fleet, destroyed their military, and took control of their capital station. That is exactly what the council would have done. Then we must show them we are different. The first meeting was with Ambassador Trillix. The avian looked smaller somehow, his feathers dull and his movements uncertain. He entered the conference room like a prisoner, expecting execution. Daihan gestured to a chair. Please sit. Are you comfortable? Do you need anything? Trillix stared at him. You are asking about my comfort? After everything? You are not my enemy, Ambassador. You were a servant of a corrupt system. There is a difference. The avian sat slowly, his eyes never leaving Daihan's face. Why did you not destroy Unity Station? You had the power. Why did you not kill the council leaders and declare yourselves rulers of the galaxy? Because that would make us no better than the council we opposed. Dr. Haijin spread documents on the table. We have studied your people's history, Ambassador. The avians were the first species integrated into the council. Your world was independent once. Your people built ships and explored space on their own terms. Trillix made a sound like a sigh. That was 800 years ago, before my grandfather's grandfather was born. Would you like that independence back? The question hung in the air. Trillix looked at Haijin, then at Daihan, then at the documents showing his people's forgotten history. Something shifted in his golden eyes. Something that might have been hope. That is truly what you want? To give us freedom? That is truly what we want. Daihan leaned forward. Not just your people. Every species in this galaxy that wants independence will have our support. We did not come here to rule. We came here to break the chains. The news spread quickly. Within hours, delegates from dozens of species were requesting meetings. Some came with suspicion, expecting tricks. Others came with desperation, afraid this chance would slip away. All of them left with the same message. Humanity was not the new council. Humanity was offering something never seen before in galactic history. Freedom. But not everyone welcomed the change. Lieutenant Jae Soom, working in the intelligence division under Commander Sujin, uncovered troubling communications. A faction of council loyalists was organizing in secret. They called themselves the Preservers, and they believed the old order was the only path to stability. They're led by several senior council members, Jae Soom reported. Species that benefited from the old system. They see our presence as temporary. They're waiting for us to leave. Then they plan to rebuild the council exactly as it was. Sujin studied the intercepted messages. And the populations they claim to represent? Do they support this? The populations were never asked. The Preservers speak only for the powerful. Meanwhile, Specialist Haiyan Wu made a discovery that changed everything. While scanning the station's infrastructure for security purposes, he found something buried deep in Unity Station's core. Something ancient and terrible. Admiral, you need to see this. Haiyan Wu's voice was tight with controlled fear. It's a weapon, built into the station's foundation. According to the files I found, it was constructed by a species that no longer exists. Haiyan examined the data. The weapon was a directed energy device, capable of destroying everything within 1,000 kilometers. Unity Station itself, the fleet, the delegates, millions of beings, all could be vaporized in an instant. Who controls it? The Council's inner circle. A group of 12 leaders from the founding species. Haiyan Wu pulled up more files. And according to the communications I intercepted, they're planning to use it. If they can't control the galaxy, they'd rather destroy everyone at this station than let it fall into our hands. Ambassador Misan closed her eyes. Madmen, they would kill millions to maintain their power. Not if we stop them. Daihan turned to Sujin. How long do we have? Based on the activation sequence, less than 20 minutes. The weapon is already charging. Mediator Ven chose that moment to request an audience. The crystalline being entered the conference room with an expression of calm superiority that seemed wrong given the circumstances. He did not know that humans had discovered the weapon. He thought he still held all the cards. Admiral Dahayan, he said, his voice like chimes in a cold wind. I come with an offer. A partnership between humanity and the Council. You would be given special status, greater than any species before you. Your fleet would become part of the peacekeepers. And in exchange, you would help us maintain order in the galaxy. Captain Wu Jin stood near the door, his hand on his weapon. He had read the intelligence reports. He knew what Ven truly was. You want us to become your enforcers, Dahayan said flatly. I want you to be practical. Ven spread his crystalline hands. You have won a battle, but you cannot win a galaxy. There are thousands of worlds, trillions of beings. You cannot protect them all. You cannot control them all, but together we could. And the weapon charging in the station's core? Is that part of your offer? Ven's light flickered. For a fraction of a second, his perfect composure cracked. How do you know about that? We know everything, Mediator. We know about the preservers. We know about the weapon. We know that you plan to kill everyone here if we refused your offer. Su Jin stepped forward. Your conspirators are being arrested as we speak. The weapon's activation sequence has been interrupted. Your plan has failed. Ven stood frozen, light scattering wildly through his crystal form. Then, slowly, he began to laugh. It was an ugly sound, nothing like wind chimes now. You think you have won? You think stopping one weapon, arresting one group, will change anything? The galaxy has always needed masters. If not us, then someone else. If not you, then whoever comes after. Nothing changes. Nothing ever changes. Admiral Dahayan rose from his chair. You are wrong. Everything changes today. He turned to Wu Jin. Broadcast this conversation to every species in Council space. Let them hear what their leaders truly think of them. Let them see the choice they are being offered. The broadcast went out. Across 1,000 worlds, beings watched Mediator Ven's words play again and again. They saw the evidence of the weapon meant to kill millions. They saw the Council's contempt for the species it claimed to protect, and they began to understand that the humans were offering something real, something worth fighting for, something that had never existed in the Galactic Council's 800 years of peace. A choice. Lieutenant Yeon Hee ran through the corridors of Unity Station with Sergeant Sung Jin and 6 combat engineers close behind. They had 15 minutes before the backup activation system triggered the ancient weapon. The main sequence had been stopped, but the preservers had prepared for failure. A secondary control, buried even deeper in the station's core, was still counting down. How far? Yeon Hee demanded, checking her display as they ran. 300 meters down, through maintenance tunnels that haven't been used in centuries. Sung Jin's voice was tight but steady. He had served in a dozen combat zones. Fear was familiar to him. The preservers sealed the main access routes. We're going to have to cut through. They reached a locked door, marked with warnings in a dozen alien languages. Sung Jin's engineers went to work with plasma cutters while Yeon Hee contacted the command center. Admiral, we've reached the outer access point. 12 minutes remaining. Dahayan's voice came back calm and clear. Understood, Lieutenant. Dr. Hai Jin is on her way to assist. She has knowledge of ancient technology that might be useful. Respectfully, sir, we don't have time to wait. She's already in the maintenance tunnels. She'll meet you there. The door fell away in molten pieces. Sung Jin led the way into darkness, his helmet light cutting through dust that hadn't been disturbed in hundreds of years. The tunnel sloped downward, deeper and deeper into the station's core. They found Dr. Hai-Jin waiting for them at a junction. Point, her slight form almost swallowed by the shadows. She held a tablet showing schematic diagrams that made no sense to Yeon-hee's military training. The weapon was built by the architects, Hai-Jin explained as they continued down. A species that went extinct 2,000 years ago. They were paranoid about invasion, so they built fail-safe weapons into every major structure they created. Can you disarm it? Probably not. But I might be able to do something better. Hai-Jin's eyes were bright with the excitement of a scholar facing an impossible puzzle. The architects didn't just build weapons. They built tools. The same energy. System that can destroy can also be redirected to create. They reached the core chamber with 7 minutes remaining. The weapon was beautiful and terrible, a crystal sphere surrounded by rings of metal that pulsed with contained energy. Numbers counted down on a display. None of them could read directly, but the meaning was clear enough. Everyone out except Dr. Hai-Jin and myself, Yeon-hee ordered. Sergeant, hold the corridor. If we fail, get word to the Admiral. Sung-jin hesitated. Lieutenant, that's an order, Sergeant. The engineers withdrew. Hai-Jin was already at the control interface, her fingers dancing across alien symbols. The activation sequence is locked, but the targeting parameters are not. If I can change where the energy goes, you can make it safe, I can make it useful. Hai-Jin looked up with a smile that held both fear and wonder. This much energy, properly directed, could power Unity Station for 1,000 years. The architects knew that. They built their weapons to be converted into generators if the threat passed. 4 minutes. Yeon he watched Hai-Jin work, understanding almost nothing of what she was doing. The scholar's hands moved with precision, entering commands in a language that had been dead for 2 millennia. Sweat rolled down her face, but her concentration never wavered. 3 minutes. There's a final lock, Hai-Jin said. A question the system asks before conversion. It's in architect language, but I think I understand it. What does it ask? It asks what the energy will be used for. The architects built their technology with intentions. If the intention is wrong, the system rejects the conversion. 2 minutes. Hai-Jin closed her eyes. When she opened them, she spoke words in a language Yeon-hee had never heard. They were soft and musical, nothing like the harsh sounds of human speech. They seemed to hang in the air, glowing faintly. The weapon responded. Light flowed through its crystal core, changing from angry red to soft blue. The countdown stopped. The rings of metal slowed their pulsing and settled into a steady, peaceful rhythm. Yeon-hee let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. What did you say? Hai-Jin smiled. I told it the truth, that we came here to set people free. The news of what had happened in the station's core spread quickly. Ambassador Mi-sun used it in her negotiations, proof that humanity's intentions were genuine. They could have destroyed the weapon. Instead, they had transformed it into something that would benefit everyone. Over the following weeks, the Galactic Council dissolved. Not through violence, but through choice. One by one, 47 species declared their independence. Some were eager, rushing to reclaim freedoms they had lost centuries ago. Others were cautious, uncertain how to live without the Council's guidance. But all of them chose. That was what mattered. For the first time in 800 years, they chose. Ambassador Trillix announced the independence of the avian species in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. His feathers had regained their bright blue color. His voice was strong. We were the first to fall under Council control. Let us be the first to rise again. Other species followed. The crystalline people, whose sacred moon had been destroyed, began the long process of rebuilding their culture. The Telex Confederacy, whose population had been starved into submission, started constructing their first warships in 300 years. Even species that had seemed loyal to the Council embraced the change. 8 centuries of forced peace had left deep wounds, and now those wounds could finally begin to heal. Not all of the changes were peaceful. Enforcer Prime Cax faced trial for war crimes committed long before humanity arrived. Dozens of species sent representatives to testify against him. The trial lasted weeks and ended with a sentence of permanent imprisonment on a distant moon. He would spend the rest of his life watching the galaxy he had terrorized learn to live without fear. Captain Wu Jin was promoted to admiral and given command of the Second Fleet. His mission was simple: protect humanity's borders and assist any species that requested help against aggression. Commander Su Jin became the chief military liaison, training defense forces for newly independent worlds. She found that she enjoyed teaching more than fighting. Dr. Hai Jin and Ambassador Mi-san drafted the charter for a new organization, the Galactic Compact. It was nothing like the Council. There was no central military, no enforcement powers, no authority over member species. It was simply a place where equals could meet to discuss trade and resolve disputes through negotiation instead of force. Colonel Pite returned to Earth as a hero, though he refused all medals and honors. He had lost friends in the battle, and that weight never left him. He spent his remaining years teaching young officers that victory was not glory. It was responsibility. Lieutenant Yan He was promoted and assigned to Unity Station's permanent garrison. Sergeant Sung Jin served under her command, steady and reliable as always. Together, they helped maintain the peace that humanity had fought to create. And Admiral De Haiyan stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable for the last time, watching ships from 30 different species depart Unity Station. Dr. Hai Jin stood beside him, her tablet forgotten, simply watching the lights move across the darkness. The galaxy expected us to be sheep, De Haiyan observed quietly. Hai Jin smiled slightly. Instead, they found shepherds. Let's hope we do better than the wolves did. That's up to us. The Admiral turned away from the window. The hard part isn't winning freedom. It's keeping it, nurturing it, making sure it means something for those who come after. Do you think we can do that? Daehan thought about everything they had accomplished and everything that still needed to be done. The galaxy was vast, and